Thank you all for coming tonight. Everybody's so happy and it's wonderful and we have sunshine and so many of us have been, this is the 64th annual meeting. So many, and so many of us have been coming for years and we brought our children here. They started skiing here, now they're grown up, and one of the lovely things was to see so many young people and young families continuing the tradition and cute little kids running down the halls in their little ski bibs. So I'm Alice Blake, I'm the past president of ACMS. James Whitaker, who's not here tonight, is our current president. And I'd like to recognize the ACMS staff, Steve Williams and Jennifer and I'd also like to recognize our newest board member of ACMS, George Thomas. And Station 1, and who's not here, and Lisa Swanson are the INA trustees. Yeah. Oh, you did? That was the other Lisa Swanson. Okay, so Lisa Swanson, who's also our speaker, she was like the next paragraph. That's right. Disconnect. Anyway, moving on. We love you, it's okay. I'd like to also mention the Winter Clinics Planning Committee, Denise Mills, who has been our president. Nick Lewis, I don't know if he's here tonight. Allie Bastian, and myself, we serve on the committee. Denise has done an amazing job. She's been our chairman for the last several years. She is stepping down, but thankfully continuing to serve on the committee. And I'd like to just maybe come up and present you with a small token of our appreciation. Yeah, great. Let's see, and Shore Lodge, great food, great audience, thank you. And let's bring up our IMA board trustee and tonight's speaker, Dr. Lisa Swanson. You all heard her give the wonderful pediatric dermatology lecture yesterday. And so I don't need to restate. She's going to talk to us about Feel the Burnout. So thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Hello again. Hello, thank you so much for having me. Thrilled to be here. Can't wait to have a fun evening talking about burnout. And I'm telling you guys the truth, it's gonna be fun. You're gonna have fun tonight and you're gonna all leave feeling better about everything. It's gonna be amazing, I promise. And so I'll dive right on in. These are my disclosures. Oopsie doopsie. I can do the,
Okay,
go try now. Okay, perfect. These are my disclosures, which really aren't relevant to the talk in the typical sense, but in a way they are, because I have found as I've struggled through burnout that speaking is a way that I can really mitigate my symptoms of burnout. And so whether it's talking for CME programs or talking for a pharma company, I love speaking. When I'm speaking about dermatology, it's the pure joy of practicing dermatology that I get to talk about. It takes away all the crap from the routine days and from the prior auths and from the all that kind of stuff, and you're just talking about helping people, and so that's where I find my joy. So not relevant in the standard sense, but relevant to me. So this is me when I was little, and I was thinking about the burden of burnout and what we're going to talk about tonight, and I was thinking, what other burdens have I been through in my life? And immediately, I knew a burden that came to mind. When I was little, I had really fat feet. Really fat, you guys. Like, I had to shop at special stores for fat-footed children. I could never, those exist. I could never have a cool pair of shoes. Every pair of shoes I wore, I didn't like. I could never wear the cool styles. My high school boyfriend called me hooves, you guys, because my feet were as long as they were wide. And here he is, right? Just kidding. Just kidding. He's long gone. He's a nice guy. And he meant it with a sense of humor, and I didn't have a problem with it. But I had these really fat feet, and it bothered me a lot. And you can see in this picture, I'm coping with it okay. I'm managing, but there were bad days too. I mean, look at my face. I am not loving those moccasins. This is not a girl that's feeling confident in her footwear. And so I was out shopping once with my mom when I was little, and I saw this pair of pink, sparkly cowboy boots. And I said, oh my God, Mom, I need those boots. Will you please buy them for me? And she said, well, try them on. If they fit, I will buy them for you. And she's thinking, there is no way on God's green earth that my fat-footed daughter is going to fit into those pink, sparkly cowboy boots. And I slipped them on, you guys, like Cinderella's slipper. And when I was in my boots, I could rule the world. I had confidence up the yin yang. I felt confident, self-assured. I owned those boots, and I owned the way I wore them. And you know, they had a heel. They came with like a bit of a heel. I wore them down to a nub. And they were my favorite. My mom eventually threw them away, and she regrets that because we should have like enshrined them somehow. They were such a crucial part of my growing up. And so in my practice, I try to make my patients feel like they are wearing pink, sparkly cowboy boots at all times, you know, confident, self-assured. Not everybody can wear them, you know, not everybody can pull them off like I did, but I try to make them feel like they're wearing pink, sparkly cowboy boots. And I hope all of you feel tonight like you leave wearing pink, sparkly cowboy boots. So we'll dive on into burnout. What is burnout? Well, I think M. Byhold knows. So how many of you guys have heard the song Numb Little Bug by M. Byhold? I have never seen a more accurate depiction or description of what burnout feels like than this song. And I typed out the lyrics so all of you could see it. It's a very pretty song. You don't get that it's all about burnout when you're listening to the song, but it's a very pretty song, and it really, I think, accurately describes what burnout feels like. And so I wanted to share that here. Burnout has three classic dimensions: physical and emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, feelings of ineffectiveness and lack of accomplishment. We all know that. We're familiar. Burnout is not a new concept. The important point to make is that burnout is not just stress. It irritates me when people say, oh, burnout, it's just being stressed out. We all deal with stress. That's not the same thing. And the difference is that burnout is something that you can't recover from after just, you know, a night at home or a weekend at the Shore Lodge. It's an ongoing thing that you're dealing with. If burnout is not addressed, it leads to a whole host of some really bad stuff. Decreased productivity, decreased quality of care, increased medical errors, depression, anxiety, substance abuse, relationship issues, and even suicide. Doctors have a higher suicide rates than most other professions, and that's a real shame. We're losing a lot of good people to burnout. Burnout is on the rise, and it's been on the rise for several years. These data points were taken from 2015 and 2017. And then we had COVID. And that just really, you know, really impacted us big time. And this was from an email I got yesterday that about 2/3 of physicians and nurses are experiencing burnout in work. So now we're in this state of a parallel pandemic where we're dealing with COVID still, although it's getting better, and the extreme burnout amongst our medical providers. And we've gotten some support programs because of this increased incidence, with various websites there to help us. Lorna Breen Act, which allocates monies to medical centers to help their employees deal with burnout. Mount Sinai has a center where all the medical care, all the mental health is free to the people who work there. So we are getting resources out there, and that's really important. So how do you know if you're burned out? Well, you know, burned out is something you kind of know it when you feel it. I definitely went through a bad time with burnout. You know it when you feel it. But in case you need more information about what burnout feels like, we have to turn to the cinema of the 90s and a movie called Office Space. No relation to this Dr. Swanson. Okay. Oh, shoot. Okay. Sorry. Let me just go back. Okay. And there.
So I was sitting in my cubicle
Okay,
today and I
should we do
realized
volume?
ever since
Okay,
I
I'll
started
restart it, guys.
working,
Hold on. Let me get it all volumed up here.
every single day of my life has been
Okay,
worse than.
hold on, pause, and go back. Okay, now we're ready.
So I was sitting in my cubicle today and I realized ever since I started working, every single day of my life has been worse than the day before it. So that means that every single day that you see me, that's on the worst day of my life.
What about today? Is today the worst day of your life?
Yeah.
Wow, that's messed up. I'm sorry. Go on.
Is there any way that you could sort of just zonk me out so that, like, I don't know that I'm at work in here? Could I come home and think that I've been fishing all day or something?
That's really not what I do, Peter. However, the good news is, I think I can help you.
So Peter clearly is dealing with symptoms of burnout. Another way you can tell is by taking some of these there are several out there about physician well-being indexes, where if you answer a certain number of questions and you answer a certain number in the affirmative, then you're suffering from burnout. The other way you know is if your Amazon shopping cart looks like this. This was my Amazon shopping cart several years ago, and I did buy all those books, and I read all of those books. And after reading all of those books, I was like, I'm going to put together a talk on burnout. And so hence my talk was born. And so this was definitely a sign that, like, I'm in trouble. I'm burnt out. You want to turn to somebody to talk to about this. And so you turn to your furry friend and you get this look and you're like, oh boy, I am in big trouble here. That is for sure. Yeah. So what causes burnout? So many things. A few listed here. We all know that we have increased logistical burdens in our offices these days. Costs of medications have become outrageous, which has made it difficult to treat patients. Loss of control over your practice, especially with the private equity movement and hospital buyouts. Erosion of doctorhood with the rise of advanced practice providers, online reviews and social media, which we'll talk about. Decision fatigue. There was an interesting study amongst judges hearing parole hearings, and they found that cases heard at the beginning of the day had a 65% chance of getting parole, and cases heard at the end of the day had a 0% chance of getting parole. So remember that in case you're ever up for parole. Be like, can you please schedule me early in the day so I get the judge at the beginning. Deterioration of the patient-doctor relationship is a biggie. Who needs us when they have Google? I was talking to a patient's dad about his son's rash, and I told him what the rash was. And after I told him what the rash was, I go into my conversation about what causes it and how we're going to treat it. And while I'm doing this, I noticed the dad has taken out his phone, and I don't know what he's doing. You know, maybe people are taking notes or whatever. But then he says, as I'm halfway through my explanation, you know, I think you're right. I Googled it, and I think you're right. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Well, good. I'm so glad you found the same thing on Google. Oh. Rising costs that fall on our patients with deductibles and copays. They're having to pay a lot of the financial expense of getting their health care, which makes them not always enthusiastic about getting health care. And our judgments are being constantly questioned, and we're dealing with a lot of angry patients. And that was happening before COVID, but it has really escalated during COVID. And so whenever a patient is angry with me, I think of Leslie Knope on Parks and Recreation after a community meeting where everybody is just yelling at her about stuff that's wrong with Pawnee. She says, these people are members of a community that care about where they live. So what I hear when I'm being yelled at is people caring loudly at me. I try to remember that people who are upset because they're worried about their loved one, and they want to make sure that everything is being done in the best interest of their loved one, and I try to approach the problem with that point of view. We have increased consumption of our personal time with notes after work. We have increased virtual life. It's hard to get away. And we have EMR, which technology has been great, but it has led to increased work for all of us. And that's a big deal, basically an extra month of work every year. This is my dad. So I think it's important that we have our work selves, we have work you and we have home you. And most of the time they should exist like a yin yang where there's equal parts devoted to both of these parts of ourselves. And I think over time, we've had an increased consumption of ourselves by work you. Work you is cannibalizing home you. And when that's out of sorts for too long, you really start struggling with it. This is my dad. When I was little, my dad, as I mentioned yesterday, retired urologist, and we would always go up to La Crosse, Wisconsin over the summers because that's where both my parents are from. They met in kindergarten. I know, cute. My dad said he didn't really notice my mom until the summer after sophomore year of high school when she really blossomed. I'm like, Dad, gross, gross. I'll just remember that you guys met in kindergarten, and that's where I'm going to leave the story. But we would go up to La Crosse, Wisconsin every year, and we would spend 2 or 3 weeks up there, and we went boating, and we went skiing, water skiing, and it was a blast. Do you think this guy is answering emails? Do you think this guy is looking at his portal? Do you think this guy is thinking about work? No. He's recharging his home self so that he can return to work and be better for it. So I've tried to take a vacation every year where I don't get cell phone service, because if I have service, I'm going to do stuff. And so I need to plan a vacation where I can't access that. Other causes of burnout: insurance companies are dictating care, legislative bodies are dictating care, and these things cause moral injury, and that's not okay. We have hurdles to jump through simply to provide care to our patients. We've had a lot of training to determine what we think is right to care for our patients, and we're constantly questioned about, what else could you be doing instead? I heard a talk saying that if you did a prior auth for a sledgehammer to do some work in your yard or in the garage, the insurance company would respond, well, have you tried a toothpick? It's like, no, because a toothpick wouldn't work. These hurdles mount, and they're destroying us. They're injuring our souls. This was a recent article in the dermatology literature about moral injury that's a result of all of this kind of stuff. And his main quote here: if we want to continue attracting the brightest, most idealistic, hardest working, most compassionate people to practice medicine, then we must protect the physician's soul. We must do what it takes to remove misaligned policies or bureaucracy. We must allow physicians to practice good medicine, because that's when we're most alive. And these things that are happening in the world of insurance and legislation are taking that away from us. This was an email the IMA sent out yesterday about the struggles physicians are going through with some of the legislative actions that have taken place so far and are in the process of taking place. Please don't move. Those of you who practice OB, who deal with pregnant women, please don't leave us. This study here said that 65% of those surveyed are considering relocating out of state. I want to tell you, as a new member of the IMA board, we hear you, we see you, we are working for you. As a woman and as a doctor, what's happening is wrong. And I promise you, I will do everything I can to fix things for you guys. It's unfair and it's not right to our patients. So stick with us, please. Stick with us. So what can be done to treat burnout? I was at a meeting once back in Colorado, and one of the attendees said, if a canary dies in a coal mine, the answer is not to get a more resilient canary. The system needs to change. The system is why we're all struggling. It's not our own resilience. Resilience can help, and we'll talk about resilience because it can help us cope with all of this. But the system needs to change to really fix burnout. I personally think fixing 3 things would make a major dent. Number 1, EMR systems need to be better. How many of you guys have seen ZDoggMD's EHR State of Mind? Yeah, fantastic. Watch it. It's funny and it's real. Watch it. It's a good thing. Watch it tonight before you go to bed. Number 2, insurance companies cannot be allowed to practice medicine. In my opinion, legislation should be passed that holds them responsible for adverse events when we are forced to follow their care plan. If they're making medical decisions, they should be liable for those medical decisions. We should also be able to charge the insurance companies, not the insured patient, for time we spend on prior auths and appeals like a lawyer charges for time. And I think if these things happened, we would see far less insurance, hassle from our insurance companies. Prior auths are a pain in the butt, and it's gotten just outrageous over the past several years. It's crazy. And when I moved here to Idaho, I discovered that there were 2 insurance companies that were requiring failure of methotrexate or cyclosporin prior to covering Dupixent for atopic dermatitis and prior to covering biologics for plaque psoriasis. And my head nearly exploded. I thought, that is wrong. We're going back in time. You guys heard at my talk yesterday about the porta potties that we had to deal with before we had these medications. I'm not going back in time to prescribe substandard care for my patients. And so I did my training at Mayo, where the best interest of the patient is the only interest to be considered. And I said, what should I do about this? I think I need to do something about this. And I thought, what would Leslie Knope do? She would take this problem, she would take this bull by the horns, and she would fix it. And I saw signs all around me encouraging me to embrace my inner superhero and attack this problem head on. And so I did. I sent an email to the 4 medical directors of Blue Cross of Idaho about why these policies are bad and inappropriate and ethically marginal and dangerous to patients. And my 8 and 9 reasons were, I think, the most strong. The only reason to require a patient to try one of these systemic immunosuppressants is for cost control. With regards to efficacy and safety, the biologic I am requesting is superior. And as a physician, efficacy and safety are my top priorities, and I'm not willing to sacrifice that. In summary, I do not think these therapies are in the best interest of my patient. By enforcing these guidelines, you're making medical decisions, and by taking over the role as medical decision maker, you are liable for any adverse events that occur. I refuse to take responsibility for medical decisions that are not my own, and this will be documented in the patient's chart so there is no confusion. I had to send the emails a few, I had to send the emails a few times. They were not responsive, as you guys could imagine, but eventually they got back to me, and I'll let you read this. So victory was achieved, you guys, and patients are benefiting from that. Thank you. And I hope that inspires you guys to also, we have our voices to enact these changes. And one of the nice things about living in Idaho, being a small state, like, we have control over a lot of these things. At bigger states, it's a harder mountain to climb. So reach out to these people. I have their email addresses if you want. Number 3, doctors should not be reviewable online. Medical care is not a piece of pizza or a pair of shoes. We have no way to defend ourselves because of HIPAA. We can't even acknowledge that we saw the patient or didn't see the patient. And we can't review our patients. If it works both ways for Uber, it should work both ways for us, and we should be able to submit something. This impacted me back in Colorado, back in 2019. I saw this 8-year-old boy who had 3 warts on his right elbow. And the dad came in and said, I think you should treat them with liquid nitrogen because it worked for me when I was a kid. And I said, well, okay, freezing is acceptable, but I think there's something better. It's called wart peel, and it works 98% of the time, and it doesn't hurt. And, freezing, you have to do it several times, and it can add up cost-wise, and it only has a 30 to 50% efficacy rate. Plus, it hurts. It'll hurt your 8-year-old son. And he's like, no, I want you to freeze it. And so I was like, okay, several treatments will be required. He's like, yep, I want you to freeze it. So I froze it. He called back a month later saying that I did it wrong and that he wanted to bring his son back in so I could do it right because the warts were still there. And I was like, well, okay. And so he came in. I told him, come in on my Saturday walk-in clinic. So they came in, and I reiterated that I thought there were better choices out there. And he said, no, I really still want to freeze them. And he told his son he wasn't allowed to cry this time because he had cried before. And he asked me about charges, and I said, actually, I don't charge for liquid nitrogen because insurance doesn't cover it, and I get angry phone calls. I just charge for the visit. And so he called a month later upset because he had been billed for his $30 copay. And he felt that that was wrong because it was a warranty treatment. I was like, there's no warranty on wart treatment. And so I tried to explain to him how copays work. And he said, well, here's the deal, Dr. Swanson. If you tell me I don't have to write this check, I will go away and you will never hear from me again. If you tell me I do have to write this check, I'm going to go online and I'm going to blast you everywhere I see your name. And I start defending myself and saying, I'm so sorry, I can write a letter to the insurance explaining that 2 treatments were needed. He hung up on me and he posted this everywhere. Facebook, Yelp, Google, he put it everywhere. And I take care of my patients and I take pride in the care I take of them. And so this was just pure misery to me. And so I was like, where can I go to for guidance and help as I'm dealing with this turmoil? And I immediately thought that I should turn to the lyrics of Taylor Swift. You are somebody that I don't know, but you're taking shots at me like it's Patron. And I'm just like, damn, it's 7 a.m. Also, haters are gonna hate, and you just have to shake it off. And so finally I was able to shake it off, but it really bummed me out for a while. Larry can testify to that. We were on a trip when it all happened. And so, it really bummed me out for a while, but you gotta get past it. You gotta prioritize your patient's care and not let the haters get you down. And honestly, joke's on him because I moved, so it doesn't matter anymore. Systemic change will take time. And in the meantime, we need to do things for ourselves to help us be our best selves for our patients and for our families. And so I came up with, after reading all of those books that I showed you guys from my Amazon shopping cart, I came up with the Swanson method of how to manage and prevent burnout. And we'll take you through these 6 steps. So step number 1, fine-tune your practice. Think about what properties would make up your ideal practice. If you could have the ideal setup, what would that entail? How many patients would you see? What would you expect your staff to do? Would you have a scribe? Where would it be located? Rural, suburban, urban? Scope of practice. Do you want to subspecialize in something? Studies show that physicians who spend more than 20% of their day doing something that's most important to them have lower rates of burnout. What do you want that to be? There are a lot of things you can subspecialize in without needing extra training. You can just go to extra meetings and learn about these things. What makes you most happy? Where do you want to be spending your time? And how does that list match up to your current practice? What steps can you change to fix that? What frustrates you during the day? Is it the prior auths? Is it no-shows? Is it patient phone calls? Do you feel like there are inefficiencies in your practice? What can you do to ease those inconveniences? And talk with your staff about it. Your staff has good ideas and they can help you brainstorm. They're very good resources to help fine-tune your practice. There's an expression, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And us going with our staffs on this mission to provide better care and to provide better self-care for ourselves is very important. Initiate a huddle every day. Anybody here do a huddle? Yeah, it's very valuable. A 5-minute huddle can save you 30 to 60 minutes during the course of a day. It's a good time to talk about how everybody is feeling. If anybody has any time commitments over lunch or at the end of the day that they have to get out for. I write out this. These are made up names. This isn't real. But I write out this for my 2 MAs every day. Accutane is something that requires some extra stuff with the iPledge program, so I like them to know that that's coming. If we have a medical student with us, if we're doing shots later, this gives them a heads up of what's coming so that we can be most prepared and everything can go very smoothly. And you can even let them know if there's a patient coming in who has a high maintenance mom, because that happens. Show appreciation to your staff. Staff will give more when they get more. Start an Employee of the Month program or some sort of employee appreciation program. We started like an Employee of the Month and they get a parking spot right up front every day for that month that they're the Employee of the Month. Thank them verbally or give them a thank you note to one staff member every week. I carry cards like this with me at all times. I bought them on Amazon and I buy a bunch of $5 Starbucks gift cards. And if somebody helps me out with something, I write a quick note like, thank you so much for talking to that crazy lady today so I didn't have to. Here's your $5 Starbucks card. Or, thank you for your patience in dealing with, the iPledge process as we worked through troubles with it. And so it's a nice way to express gratitude. This is Edith. Edith was my MA back in Denver, back in Colorado. And when Frozen came to town, I bought tickets for her and her daughter Sophia to go to Frozen on Broadway in Denver, which they really enjoyed. This is Tony. She's my right-hand man here in Boise. She does all the tough stuff. She gives all the shots. She talks to the crazy people, and she really helps me out. And one day after work, she came to me and she said, I was listening to a podcast this morning and there was a person on there that was talking about how her job was just a job. It was just a paycheck. She would go in, she would do her work, she would go home. She didn't find any inspiration in it. She didn't find any meaning or purpose in it. It was just a job to her. And the person hosting the podcast suggested that this person should potentially seek another job that she could feel more passionate about. And Tony said, I know I don't have to worry about that because you inspire me every day with the care that we provide and the way you value our patients. And it makes me know that I'm in the right place and I'm doing the right thing. And I'm like, thank you so much, Tony. That's so meaningful to me. And then she gave me this card with a little writing on the bottom of it that I'll let you read. And she gave it to me on a Tuesday, and she said, it can't be this week because I've already complained, but next week, next week I'll do that. Step number 2, adjust your mindset. If you aren't happy, think about your definition of happiness. How many people know who this is? Anybody? Oh yeah, so this is Dave Mustaine, and Dave Mustaine is a guitarist. And back in 1983, he was in a heavy metal band, and they had just signed their first record deal, and they were about to start recording their first record. And right in that moment, the band kicked him out, sent him back on a bus from New York City to LA. And by the time he got back to LA, he said he'd been ruminating about it the entire bus ride. And he's like, I'm gonna create a better band with better musicians, with better songs, with better albums. And we're gonna be more successful than that band that didn't appreciate me. And he did that. He created Megadeth, which sold over 25 million albums and has toured the country and considered to be a very influential and brilliant heavy metal band. But the band that kicked him out was Metallica. And they've sold over 180 million albums and has toured the world and are considered to be the best rock band of all time. And he said even in 2003, he admitted he still sees himself as a failure. So what is your metric for success? Everybody has different values that makes them feel successful. By our metrics, Dave Mustaine is a huge success. Oh my gosh, Megadeth. But by his metric, be more popular and successful than Metallica, he's a failure. How many people know who this guy is? Anybody? Anybody? So this is Pete Best. And in 1962, he was a member of a band. He was the drummer. It was a band in Liverpool, England. And that band had just signed a contract to record an album, and they were getting ready to do it, and they kicked him out and replaced him with somebody else. And he went into a bad tailspin. He had severe depression. He sued 2 of the former band members. He attempted suicide. His mom intervened and talked him out of it. He really had a hard time because that band was the Beatles, and they had replaced him with Ringo. Oh, that just hurts, huh? But Pete Best in 1994 said, I'm happier than I would have been with the Beatles. Getting kicked out led him to meet his wife, have kids, change his values. He measured life differently. Success was a big and loving family, a stable marriage, a simple life, and so he was happy. So if you want to change how you see your problems, you have to change what you value and or how you measure failure and success. It might be you're perfectly happy, you just are always comparing yourself to Metallica. Step 3, which I know you guys all are. You seem like the types. Compare yourself to Metallica. Step 3, realize you're only human. A little perspective from the sports world. So Jeff McNeil of the New York Mets had the best batting average in Major League Baseball in 2022, .326. That means he hit the ball 32.6% of the time. So a third of the time he was able to hit the ball and have a hit and end up on base. Justin Tucker of the Baltimore Ravens had the best field goal kicking percentage in history at 90.5%. Geno Smith, yes, Geno Smith, you guys, of the Seattle Seahawks had the best completion rate of all quarterbacks last year at 70.2%. Steph Curry has the best free throw percentage at 90.69%. None of these numbers are 100%. And as physicians in our career, we strive for 100%, and that's what our patients expect and sometimes rudely demand, but that's just not realistic, and we need to have some grace for ourselves. Physicians are perfectionists. As perfectionist physicians, we have a dangerous propensity to assume everything is our fault, and that can carry a bad experience with us for a long, long time. So even if you miss the free throw in the last inning of the Super Bowl, learn from that. Mixing my sports metaphors. Learn from that, and next time when you get up to plate, you'll hit a home run. So embrace your complications, document them, learn from them, teach from them. This is how we learn, this is how we get better. Step number 4, celebrate your successes. How many people remember this guy? Yeah. So you're good enough, You're smart enough, and doggone it, people like you. Remember that. Give yourself these daily affirmations. Have your moment when things go right. It's these moments that remind you why you went into medicine. Physicians are more satisfied when they perceive that they're delivering high quality care and they're doing a good job. So take the joy from those good moments to ride out the bad moments. And I know you guys all have your success stories. I wanted to share a few of mine. So this is Bear. Little Bear is 5 years old, and he has horrible atopic dermatitis. And he came in to see me, and he had never seen a dermatologist before, and he was just head to toe atopic dermatitis. And he was so itchy and so uncomfortable, and he was small in his growth curves, and he couldn't swim because the water irritated his eczema, and he couldn't play outside because sweat irritated his eczema. And this kiddo, was way beyond the Aaron regimen in terms of the severity of his eczema. He needed Dupixent. So I talked to the patient's parents about going on Dupixent. They were very much on board. And I turned to Bear and I said, hey, bud, your eczema, it's pretty bad. And I know it's making you miserable. And I know you're itchy. And I know you wish you could swim and you wish you could play outside. And what if I could tell you that there's a medicine that would help you with that it would make you less itchy, that you could do all those things you want to do. You would feel better, you would look better, and life would be better. You would sleep better. And he said, I would want to do it. And I said, now, the thing is that medicine is a shot and it's once a month, and it'll make your eczema into something you think about once a month rather than every day. And the 2 to 3 seconds of ouch are worth feeling better all those other seconds of all those other days. And he was kind of on the fence. He wasn't quite sure with the shot bit. And I said, Bear, have you seen the commercials for Dupixent? And he said, are those the commercials where the kids take off the clothes and it's the color of the background behind them? I was like, yes, those are the ones. And he thought about it for a second and he said, I'll do it if I can be on a commercial. And I was like, okay, Bear, I will work on that for you. I will work on that for you. So we started Dupixent. He let us start Dupixent. And 1 month later, he came back in and he said, Dr. Swanson, my skin doesn't shed anymore. And I went to SeaWorld and I was outside all day and I went swimming in the ocean and I went swimming in the pool and I went swimming in the hot tub. And when can I be on that commercial? And so we're working on it. And chances are, wheels are in motion. You're going to see Bear on a Dupixent commercial one of these days. I talked yesterday about JAK inhibitors for atopic dermatitis. We've also learned that JAK inhibitors work remarkably well for alopecia areata and vitiligo. And we also have a JAK inhibitor officially approved to treat alopecia areata. It's called Olumiant or baricitinib, but that was just approved last year. And before we had that, a lot of us were using Xeljanz off-label to treat alopecia areata. And this was the first patient that I put on Xeljanz for alopecia areata. This is Brooke. She was 35 when I met her. She had alopecia areata for 20 years. She had never dated. She had always worn a wig, very self-conscious about it. When I told her about Xeljanz, because the articles were in existence, even though it wasn't officially approved, she broke into tears of joy that there might be something to help. And so she was the first patient that I started on Xeljanz. And this was her at baseline. This was her at 3 months. You can see the sprouts. This was her at 6 months, you guys. Brooke, who had never dated, got married a year ago. And was I invited to the wedding? No. Should I have been? Yes. And she asked me recently, she said, what happens if I want to have kids? And I said, we'd have to stop the medicine. And she said, well, I'll adopt. This is Emma, 16 years old, horrible alopecia areata. Can you imagine 16 with horrible alopecia areata? We got her started on Xeljanz. This was her at baseline. This was her at 3 months. She's like a little chia pet, you guys. She's still my patient. She's still on medicine. She's still doing awesome. This is her at college with her dad at a football game. She's a sophomore at the University of Kansas. This is Samri. Samri has vitiligo, extensive vitiligo. We talked about Xeljanz. We started her on Xeljanz. This was her at baseline. This was her at 9 months. Take out the improvement in her vitiligo, which is impressive, and just look at her face before and after. It's amazing. This is Audrey. Audrey came to me with over 100 warts, most of them on her face. They were dripping from her nose, dripping from her eyelid. We tried everything. I did wart peel, I did candida, I did all my tricks, and none of it worked. And she was 9 years old, and I said, I've seen case reports of using the HPV vaccine and patients with warts respond. And I said, would you guys be willing to do that? Yes, they were. Pediatrician was ready to administer it. This was her 1 month after the first shot, you guys. And she had warts dripping from her nostrils previously. This is Derek and Dylan. They came to me in Colorado, erythrodermic with psoriasis. They were head to toe psoriasis. They're twins. And when they were like that, they really just hung out with themselves. They didn't really have much for a social life. They didn't really have much for friends. And we got them on a biologic and they felt more confident. And I could see that at each visit. And about 9 months into treatment, they sent me this photo. They were going to prom. And not only did they have dates, but they actually had girlfriends, which is amazing, knowing Derek and Dylan as I did. So celebrate your successes. Celebrate with your team, staff members, other doctors, high fives, fist bumps, celebration dancers. There's a reason that professional athletes do this stuff. It builds momentum. It builds team mentality. I would maybe not do the butt slaps, but other than that, high fives and dancing sounds okay. Step number 5, recharge your batteries. Think of yourself as a car or your cell phone. If you run out of gas, your car's not going to work. If your cell phone runs out of battery, it's not going to work. What recharges us is a little bit different for all of us. Take care of yourself, get enough sleep. We're all ready to get enough sleep after the wonderful talk yesterday. Eat a healthy diet, exercise, take vacation, and don't feel guilty about it. Consider having a weekly bucket list of things that you want to make happen during the week and schedule time for what matters in your life. Don't double book it and stick to it. Practice saying no in the mirror so that you're prepared and ready to say no when people ask you to do stuff you don't want to. And so it's much easier if you have that no stored in your brain so it's ready to go. Develop a hobby, do something fun with your family. Larry and I, my boyfriend Larry and I, were on a mission to visit all the baseball ballparks, Major League Baseball ballparks. We've done 17. We have 13 more to go. This was us in Miami. It was a fantastic trip. It was super fun. The restaurant there even had a hot dog wrapped in funnel cake, you guys. It was amazing. I mean, it was kind of gross, but also amazing. You also want to make sure you're spending time with your home team. This is Mosby, our Yorkie Bichon. What a cutie. We call him Mosby Bear. We named him after Ted Mosby on How I Met Your Mother. This is Lucy, wild and crazy Lucy. She loves to roll her head in the blankets, and so it makes her ears all staticky. And she loves to roll on our pool cover. And so Larry was able to catch this gem of a shot with her experiencing a moment of joy on the pool cover. The power of music to recharge our batteries is significant. Make playlists that you can play at certain times. Maybe you have a going to work playlist or a coming home from work playlist, or a playlist like just in case you're having a bad day, you lock yourself in your office at lunch and you listen to that music. There's studies showing that music can change our mood the quickest of anything. Create your walkout song. This is a baseball reference. So when players come to the batting area, the home base, Larry, I'm sorry. The home plate, thank you. I'm a disappointment. I have been to 17 baseball ballparks, I swear. But when they come out, they have their walkout song. I used to call it a coming out song, and then Larry kept correcting me, like, no, it's a walkout song, it's not a coming out song. But come up with your song that really jazzes you up and pumps you up. These are a few suggestions. My walkout song is always Wrecking Ball by Miley Cyrus. Love it. Consider a boundary ritual when you get home. Take a shower, change your clothes, walk the dog, exercise. Your commute can even be a boundary ritual. Have a playlist to listen to or a podcast. Take some big deep breaths. Divide your work time from your home time. Mr. Rogers was the best example of a boundary ritual. He would come through the door, he'd take off his jacket, he'd put on his sweater, he'd take off his shoes, he'd put on his tennies, he'd sing his song, Won't You Be My Neighbor? And that was his boundary ritual. He was now home. Getting more involved, even though it seems like an investment of time and resources and energy, can actually help build your resiliency. It allows you to work within the system to make things better for doctors as a whole. Attending CME meetings, being here helps. Being here with your colleagues. The connections doctors make with other doctors is vitally important for all of us. We are the only ones that know what we go through. Participating in free screening programs, again, even though it sounds like extra work on your day off, it actually brings you joy to bring you back to the basics of why we went into healthcare. And when in doubt, you can always turn to the internet for a source of recharging your batteries. How many of you guys know the story of Arthur the dog? Oh, this is a wonderful story. So there's these groups of people that participate in these crazy trekking competitions where they'll go to Ecuador. That's where this took place. They'll go to Ecuador, and different teams from different companies will compete in this 430-mile trek that involves hiking and kayaking and swimming and mountain biking. And it's this rigorous thing. I mean, it sounds awful to me, but to each their own. But this team from Sweden was on this trek in Ecuador, and one night at camp, this little stray dog, Arthur, came up to them, and the team leader, Mikhail, gave him a meatball. And I can only imagine it was like an IKEA meatball, because they're from Sweden, something really good. Because from that point on, Arthur was with them. He was a part of the team. He did the rest of the trek with them. And at one point, they were supposed to get into kayaks. And the people who run the race said, you really need to leave the dog here. And so they attempted that. They all climbed in their kayaks and they started rowing away. And Arthur jumped in the water and swam to them. He wanted to be with them. And so Arthur completed the trek with them and went back to Sweden with the team leader, Mikhail, and went on to live a wonderful life back in Sweden, full of meatballs, full of IKEA meatballs. You also see this photo bomb from Fiona the hippo at the Cincinnati Zoo, interrupting this very special moment and proposal. And then she stuck around to pose for more pictures. There is some good in the internet, and we can turn to it for some joyful stuff. Keep the bad stuff away, but you can use it for some of the joyful stuff. Step number 6, manage your stress. We all know that there are good ways and there are bad ways to manage our stress. I love this. Larry showed me this last week. I thought it was just hysterical, and I saw myself in it a little bit. Good ways to manage your stress. We'll talk about each of these, but your brain functions the best when you're doing all these things, and it allows you to be your most productive, most creative, most constructive. See a therapist or a counselor, go to a support group, or if you don't really want to talk to somebody else, start a journal. Write down 2 or 3 thoughts every day. Just getting it out in some way to vent is very helpful. BetterHelp.com is a good resource. People seeking mental health care is at an all-time high, and so wait times to see a mental health specialist are really high. BetterHelp.com is an online resource where you fill out a questionnaire and it matches you to a licensed counselor or therapist within 72 hours, and you can do it all virtually, either in front of a screen or just your voice or just texting, and so it makes access to that counseling even more easy for us. Exercise is important. It's like Ritalin mixed with Prozac. Even a single session of aerobic exercise improves our cognition and our energy, and it also boosts your mood, motivation, and ability to deal with stress. So go out and exercise. Sleep, as we learned yesterday, very, very important. Your brain does not function as well when you're sleep deprived. A week of sleeping 4 to 5 hours a night causes impairment equivalent to a blood alcohol level of 0.1. Smile. Studies show that smiling can trick your brain into believing that you are happy. And so even when you don't want to, being positive and putting a smile on your face can actually trick your brain into feeling happier. Studies have shown that being near someone in a good mood can lift people's spirit, and being near a grumpy person does the opposite. In studies, sad people perceived a hill as being higher and steeper than happy people did. So before you enter every room, take a deep breath and show those pearly whites. And sometimes, so I have a way of doing this. I do this all the time. Smile, smile, smile. And sometimes people will say, how are you so happy all the time? And I'll say, I'm not even happy right now because you just made me talk for 30 minutes about gluten, But I'm going to put this smile on my face. You better believe it. Monotasking. Embrace the beauty of monotasking. No one can truly multitask. When it's studied, multitasking actually takes longer, causes more mistakes. Those who think they're the best at multitasking are actually the worst at it, and it makes you feel like you're working swiftly, but you're actually getting less done in more time, and you're doing it all poorly. So just embrace monotasking. To-do lists are good. There's actually reward neurohormones released in our brain when we cross things off of a to-do list. Don't make make the tasks too huge. Make them accomplishable so that you can get those reward neurohormones as you cross those things off. Breathe. It sounds simple, but we don't really breathe, especially when we're busy. There's a technique where you do like the hang loose Hawaii signal, and you just do it 3 times. You press one nostril closed, take a big breath, and then breathe out, and then do the other nostril, deep breath in and go out. And so a lot of times I'll do these breathing exercises, especially when I know the room I'm about to go into is really gonna be a doozy. So I'll do like 2 or 3 of those to get myself all pumped up, and then I'll smile, and then I'll hear wrecking ball in my brain, and then I'm okay. Mindfulness. We've all heard about mindfulness. It's putting down your juggling balls for a bit, paying attention in a particular way, being present, being curious, not judgmental. One of the greatest examples of mindfulness is from Ferris Bueller. Life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it. And that's very true. And if you do stop and look around, sometimes the things you see are really amazing. This is the CATS program at the Denver International Airport. CATS stands for Canine Airport Therapy Squad. CATS, which is funny to me. But it's just watching the dogs walk around. A, I'm just a huge dog person. B, the joy that I see on people's faces when they see the dogs, it's really heart lifting. You see a lot of stuff in airports. This is another thing I saw in the Sacramento airport. Look at these people. What are they doing? They're in public. How is that comfortable? And look at the poor stranger sitting next to them. So look around, you'll see some things you're not expecting. And remember, Cookie Monster, today me will live in the moment unless it's unpleasant, in which case me will eat a cookie. Start a gratitude journal. Write down 2 or 3 things every night that you're grateful for, or 3 good things about a day, or 3 funny things, something that helps you think in a positive way, either every night or first thing in the morning. There are several meditation apps that can teach a non-hippie how to meditate. I've tried them both, Headspace and Calm. I like Headspace the best. The voice of the guy doing it is very soothing. He's like British or something. And so it's like, I could listen to him talk all day. Very relaxing. Anything that lets you zone out for a little bit is a mindfulness activity. I actually think one of my favorite mindfulness activities is watching The Bachelor. Nothing else turns my brain off better than watching The Bachelor. But you can also do things like fly fishing, Tai Chi, yoga, puzzles. There was a study looking at doing a puzzle while listening to an audiobook, and it really does some fun stuff to your brain, really synergistic effects. Adult coloring books. Anybody here use an adult coloring book? So that's great. Back when I was struggling a lot with burnout, I was telling Larry about these ideas that I had read about, including the adult coloring books. And one day he said, "Oh, I got you something in the mail, and I think you're really gonna like it." And I said, "Oh, yay, a present. I'm so excited. Is it shoes or something?" And so I opened it up, and it was this. Thank you, Larry. Thank you, Larry. And speaking of Larry, I wanted to thank Larry. Larry and I are not married. We're like Oprah and Stedman. We're like Kurt and Goldie. We're like Mickey and Minnie. But he's my partner and the best dang dog dad ever. Thank you, Larry. And thank all your Larrys. Whoever's a Larry to you in your life, thank them. Thank you so much for having me. It's been really fun. Thank you, guys. Great time. Thank you all.
Dr. Swanson, you created a new problem for us in that we had to turn people away from the Saturday evening banquets because your talk yesterday was so amazing. People are going, "I didn't sign up because I'm so burned out on burnout talks." But now it's like, I'm signing up for the banquet, and now how am I going to outdo this every single year?
Thank you.
Thank you.
I could just come back.
Okay, yay. We'll have it. All right. Done deal.
Any questions or anything?
Yeah, questions. Anybody have any questions?
Or I demic myself?
They want to know, how did you get through the Blue Cross? That's the real question.
Yeah. Strongly worded emails and persistence. Yeah. Leslie Knope thinks that with hard work and positivity, anything is possible. And I subscribe to that. And just pestering. Yeah. Well, thank you guys. Thank you again. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, Mickey Meyer here. I just wanted to toss out the that you mentioned mindfulness, and the Ada County Medical Society has a mindfulness group that meets every other week, remotely right now, headed up by Deb Roman and Marlash Desai, beautiful, wonderful people, and I highly recommend it. We've been doing it, we bumped into them here, but 3 or 4 years ago. Anyway. Great program.
I 100% agree. I think the resources here in the Treasure Valley are really wonderful. The Physician Vitality Program, all the work that Stephen does, all the work that Deb Roman does. When I moved here, I was very, very impressed with all of that. This is a very good medical community to be a part of. We'll work on our legislators, but otherwise a very good medical community to be a part of. Yes. Yeah, I am happy to share it. I am happy to share it. Just email me and I'm happy to share it. And you can tweak it for your own purposes. I would change it a little bit just so they're not like, what's Lisa Swanson doing? She's she's recruiting a core. Yeah. But email me, lisaswansonmd@gmail.com, and I'll send you exactly what I sent to them. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you, guys.
We'll send all the medical directors emails out to you for all the insurance companies. We actually, honestly, in the Treasure Valley, they get together routinely, and they have been working on prior auth for the past 4 or 5 years. Dr. Ed McKeeker and Dr. Deb Roman have a prior auth action collaborative. And so stuff is happening already. And what they're working on next is getting rid of the intrusive mental health questions off of all credentialing applications. Throughout the insurance companies, credentialers. We're going to work on that with employers. We're going to deal with the Board of Medicine question again this summer. We're going to have that transfer into dentistry and vets and all the other licensures under DOPL. And that's all going to happen this year because it's starting here in Ada County with doctors like you who are really invested. So if that's something you want to get lit up about and involved in, there's a place for you to plug in. It's really exciting to see it happen here in Idaho. So. Yeah, the Physician Vitality Program, if you're an ACMS member, a great resource, and there's a ton of other resources on the website. We'll be back tomorrow morning, 7:15 downstairs, 6:30 for breakfast here, and Dr. Evans will be starting. If you plan to go to the gut health talk, that's going to start second. The IBD talk will be first, and Dr. Michael Wheaton will be in the middle. So excited to have you guys here. Thank you again, Dr. Swanson. Janet, thank you again for being with us tonight. We really appreciate it.
Our hearts are full. Thank you.
Have a good evening.